Hello, everyone. My name is Douglas Draconen. I'm going to be your host for this week's community show. Earlier this week, we saw 32 men submitted formal requests to the Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control, urging the cancellation of their children's passports following the DNA test that revealed that they were not their biological fathers. So tonight, or today, joining me to discuss tonight's topic, which is DNA tests, the impact in families and communities. So joining me to discuss this topic, I am joined by a friend and a brother by the names Dr. Rubangakene Shah. Shah, thank you for honoring our invitation. And when the time comes, I'll ask you to unmute and say hello to the viewers. Thank you, Shah. And right next to Shah, I'm joined by Mrs. Molly Bushinje Katewa. She's married. She's a midwife by profession, CEO of To Have. That name is kind of complicated, but she will tell us. And last but not least, she's a counselor and a family therapist. As you can see there, our panel is filled with enough expertise to help us break tonight's conversation into something that all of us would understand. So I'll start with you, Miss Molly. Kindly unmute and introduce yourself so that we can get straight to the conversation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Molly Bushinje Katewa. I think I've been introduced, but I can just go through again. Yeah, I'm a midwife, I'm a counselor, I'm married, like you've heard, and I'm also a family therapist and a CEO at Havrane platform, where we share knowledge and enlighten people about the well-being of families, because we believe that family is the backbone of society. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very much, Miss Molly. That name, the T name, it's kind of complicated for me to pronounce, but thank you, and thank you for honoring our invitation. Shah, are you there? If you're there, kindly please unmute and introduce yourself.
Yes, I am around, my brother.
Yes, kindly introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Rubangakene Francis Shah. Apparently, I grew up with a host in the same area code. I am a cytologist with Uganda Cancer Institute. I work in the Comprehensive Community Cancer Program Department. I grew up in a household where I had only one parent, but in my neighborhood, we also experienced a lot of issues relating to paternity, even as we grew up, and I've seen how people have navigated such kind of situation, and I'm glad we are opening this conversation. I hope it will be an engaging one, more educative, and one which is fulfilling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shah. It's true that we grew up together, and now that we are all grown up and we are all here, so you'll tell us our childhood stories and how possibly it relates to tonight's conversation. I'll begin with you, Shah. In your introduction, you made mention that you're a medical doctor, and tonight's conversation for our viewers out there who possibly do not know what DNA is or what DNA testing is, would first of all want to get up to speed and understand what is this thing called DNA. And if at all they understand what DNA is, are there also types or examples of DNA that they would want to understand? So kindly please unmute and help us package this conversation in that the layman outside there who is watching us can possibly understand what DNA testing is and what DNA is before we go straight into the conversation. Shah.
Yes, Drake, thank you very much. First of all, DNA is, how do I say it? It's a genetical material that the body uses to store information at a molecular level. That is, it is a two-stranded part of the body that is in a cell, and the information the body uses, that the body stores, is concerned with genetical information. Like it's like a software primordial software information or code. So the body uses DNA as a way of storing some information that are very important, and this kind of information is called genetic code. And genetic code determines how someone looks, how someone talks, behaves, grows, literally everything. It's like our software. What writes it's what determines how we become. But of course, nurture also influences. So I think that's in a layman's term, that's what DNA is. It is deoxynucleic acid. I'm sorry. And I don't want to go so much into the medical composition because I don't think that's what this topic is. This conversation is about. But what we are discussing here is paternity DNA testing in Uganda.
Yes.
Now, over the years, people have used other methods.
Sure.
Yes.
Just before you go into telling us the other methods that possibly are there for us to understand, are there like types of DNA testing that you mentioned? Because you mentioned there is paternity testing. Is also there something like maternity, ancestral testing, among others? Kindly help us break that down as well.
Okay, so I was trying to bring this entire thing, defining it historically, also to see how medicine has advanced, and also explain, all these other things. But since my brother asked me, one, DNA ideally should have had nothing to do with determining whether you're a father or not to a child. But because a father and a son share a great percentage of this genetical information, so we compare the two. And there, as Drake said, DNA testing is used for a vast number of things. It is used for fertility testing, maternity testing. We use it for even sibling testing. We use it for forensic DNA testing, that is in criminal investigation, even genetical ancestry testing. Like, the way Drake said, we use DNA testing in it. And sometimes you use it for genetic health testing, like finding out certain, conditions that might, or risk factors that might develop, like in cancer. We use DNA testing as a form as a way to test whether you have genes that might lead to development of certain types of cancers. And these are called tumor markers. And so if you have some of them, we determine how much percentage of this DNA or this genetical information or composition do you have, and what risk do you stand. So DNA is used in a lot of things. It's still even a new area that scientists are delving in more and more to learn its potential. And I think the conversation here today is just all about paternity testing. But as I said, it's also used for paternity and siblings. I am one of the few who actually did a sibling DNA testing with some person. But I will leave that aside. So now moving forward, Drake, we over the years, scientists have used other methods. Understanding genetical inheritance is very important, key in this, that a child inherits half of the genetical information of the mother and half of the genetical information of the father. The father has, and this is through chromosomes. The father has the XY chromosome while the mother has the XX chromosome. And if you did it in a simple manner, is you just match them. You see that a child will always get half from the mother, half from the father. Now, what we always compare is the existence of the father's DNA or information in a child, and how much. And there's a certain level or a certain number that we put that, okay, if you have this much information or DNA content from this man, then you are definitely born of him. But of course, those information are not completely the same. So as I said before, DNA is a double-stranded compound. But along those strands, there are some regions that give us information about the father, the mother, and all that. Yeah, it gives us information. Now, what used to happen is that we've had similar situation of inheritance, or what the child gets from their liking. For example, conditions like sickle cell. Inheritance of sickle cell is entirely dependent on the genetics of both parents. The other one also is that they used to do is blood grouping. A parent who is A, yes.
Kindly, before we go into that elaborate aspect of sickle cell, which I think could possibly not be the ground of our discussion today, I want you to, in just a minute, break down for us the aspect of paternity DNA testing, because that is what is prevailing right now. And it's something that our viewers would like to also understand. Just in a minute, then I invite Miss Molly. And thank you, Frank, for joining. When the time comes, I'll request you to unmute, turn on your video, and then introduce yourself and get straight to the discussion. Thanks for joining, Sha.
Yes, so in paternity DNA testing, what happens is that we are trying to determine whether a father is the biological father of a child or not. So what we do is we pick a DNA sample from a child and then the alleged father. It's processed in an accredited laboratory. Right now in Uganda, it's a national analytical lab. And after processing, what they do is during COVID, we got exposed to PCR, polymerase chain reaction. They do exactly PCR, and what PCR does is that a very small quantity or small, sample, DNA sample like hair or mouth swab is PCR helps to pick a very small sample and make a very, very big copy of it. It keeps copying, it replicates, you get. And with that, we can have like a very large sample of the same small DNA sample. Then the same thing is that they use PCR to compare the two. There's a reaction that happens at the formation of other chains, and we see. So DNA is about, like, the DNA strands are complementary, and so they try to compare the two. Now they profile the child's DNA and they profile the father's DNA. I wish I could explain some of these things in medical terms. I'm really trying to keep as layman as I can. The profile is like a human being's DNA profile is like DNA has A, C, T. You get, like, they're like in letters like that.
Yeah.
So what they do is they profile those. They're called amino acids, and they're like building blocks of a DNA. What they do is they profile them. Like if it's AAC, like they profile them in that order. AAC, so that specific region that is the same with that of the father. AAC, CAAO, you get OT, you get. Now
Thank
the
you.
other side, so they do the same. Then they do a comparison of the two, and we see how much does the child have this side that the father have this side,
All right.
or the alleged father have this side, and then we compare the accuracy. And with that, we come out with a conclusion using percentage that, this is the alleged father is indeed truly a biological father of the child or not. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Sha. Later on, I'll ask you on the accuracy of that. But for now, let me first engage with Molly. Molly, you are a family therapist and a counselor. And you know that the prevalence testing, the paternity testing of DNA that is happening in Uganda is causing a huge upsurge to breakages of families. Now, before we go into the impact that this has on families and communities, Molly, my question to you is, I want you to first tell us what is causing this prevalence of paternity DNA testing in Uganda, particularly among men?
Yeah, of course, the causes are very many, and we cannot, even today as we discuss, I know we will not exhaust them. But first of all, I want to thank the CCG for this innovation, and because I believe with this, it is reaching far and even touching more people. I also want to thank my Mr. Hash, is it Hash, who was speaking before me, for Sha, for educating us about the DNA and its details. Yeah, but of course the causes are many. It's not one thing or this, but it's all a bunch of many things. Of course, we are in an environment where things are changing every day, social, psychologically, mentally, financially. And this all comes with a lot of pressures on people, on society, and the whole human race. But first of all, I think it is all goes back to moral degradation that we are seeing, the decay in morals, from families to societies and the nation at large, because this, by the time someone asks for a DNA, it reveals a lot of things, mistrust. Someone does not just raise one day and say, I want to do a DNA. No, it's a pile up of many things. Either they've been noticing, or they've been hearing, or they've been going through. So the causes, one of them could be mistrust between the couples, and which is a collection from different things, because someone will tell you, I have my reasoning, and I've been seeing this, and this. So they be having their own reasons, and all those reasons, they pile up and increase on the mistrust that will lead someone to do that. And and of course, where there is mistrust, that means those two people, they are no longer walking on the same road. They are in different picture. They are on different roads, and they are no longer united, because the Bible says that the two cannot walk together unless they agree. So that shows that at that time, people are mistrusting each other, when people are suspecting each other, they are not on the same page. So mistrust could be one of the cause. And of course, also another one could be the greed. You see, people, we are in this culture where you want many things, you want a pile up of things, this and this. And so that one, if it finds you on the ground where someone is not grounded, then you, due to the desire to have this and this and this, if your spouse or partner cannot provide it, so the person is tempted to go and find them somewhere, and so many causes that lead to someone desiring or asking for a DNA test. Yeah, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Modi. You vividly highlight that the issues relating to the prevalence of the paternity DNA testing are centered on grounds relating to moral decadence that we're facing in Uganda as a whole, and the aspect of mistrust among spouses. But before I engage Frank, I just have another follow-up question with you. You see, when you raise issues to do with moral decadence or mistrust, in among families. And that is among the major reasons that people are facing today. Now, kindly paint for us a picture or relate this to scenarios that we are seeing, because when I was reading by The Onion, there was this gentleman, he goes by the name Abitex. He's a promoter. And out of the 9 children that he has, when he went and carried out a DNA test, 8 of them weren't his. Now, this man is frustrated. Now, do you think these are only caused by mistrust among couples, or there could be possibly other reasons that are relating to the prevalence of men going ahead to carry out DNA testing? Molly.
I talked about the pressures, the financial pressures.
Yes.
I also talked about it because, like I said, greed. Because someone who is not contented with what they have, they would want to find it somewhere else. And like I told you, us living in this atmosphere where you find people are no longer like I said, the moral degradation that is like, to me, it is like the major cause of all these other causes that come up. Because if you're not grounded, if you don't have principles that govern your life, you will find yourself being taken up by anything that comes. Because there will never be a day in life where you have everything that you would ever want in life. You just have to learn to be content. So if you ask that woman what caused her to go and maybe sleep with other men to other than his husband, of course, as a person, she will justify herself and give you any other reasons. Maybe he was not around. Maybe this one was putting me on pressure. He was giving me money. Many things. Some people can give different things. Maybe I was not satisfied in bed. I went to look for someone who can satisfy me. Maybe this one day he annoyed me, so out of anger, he went also to revenge, things like those. But when you go back to the really basic reason, those could be, I call those ones branches. But when you go back to the real problem, you see it has to do with morals and lack of principles, and also maybe poor upbringing. Because if someone has grown in an environment where they see that if you don't have something, you go and get it. If something fails, you can't. They don't know how to sit down and solve issues. If you get like a misunderstanding for them, they know. The one person annoys me, I move on to another one. There's that one, poor upbringing, and it all cultivates all these other things. So the major thing for me, I would say it is poor moral degradation, upbringing, and and lack of principles as a person, because we will always have those other external pressures. But our role is to be self-controlled amidst all these challenges that we meet in the world. But if you're the person who is taken up because you're taken up by this and this, because I want a new phone, it has come, I want an iPhone has come, I want a new car, my husband cannot provide it, then you have to get someone who can provide it. So it is all a cocktail of many and many issues. I don't know if I've answered you.
Yes, you have. You have succinctly answered my question. Thank you very much, Molly. I'll get back to you and we explore the possible impacts it has in our communities. But for now, let me engage Frank Uche. Frank, thank you for joining us, and a very good morning to you. Kindly first introduce yourself, then you can go ahead to and ask a question.
My name is Frank Uche. I am a lawyer by profession. And maybe the other name I should add in respect to this topic is that I am also an aspiring husband to be. So yes, that is me, and happy to be here.
All right. We are happy to have you here, Frank. You made mention that you're an aspiring husband to be and be a lawyer. And the fact that very many men are opting to go ahead and carry out tests for their children. Now, you're a lawyer yourself, and in law there's what they call the best interest principle, that is for the child. And considering that at the moment the victims of this DNA testing are children, what is your take on this? Because we are now assessing the impact it has on families, but I wanted to first look at the biggest impact here is that the people who are suffering the most are children. So kindly, considering the best interest, explain to us the impact it's having on the children that are losing out on could-be fathers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Jock, for the question. I think it's quite an interesting discussion today. However, before we look at the impacts on children, I need to first provide some legal background.
Sure.
Now, technically, DNA test is not something that is illegal. It's something that is within the law, and the law allows it, right from the Constitution to the Children's Act. Now, to begin with, and when you look at the Constitution, you go to Article 34(1), you realize that the Constitution is actually very clear. It provides that every child has a right to know who their father or who their parents are. Anyway, it uses the word parents. That involves the father and the mother. So you get to realize that from that very beginning, the Constitution is already giving us a legal path to allowing DNA tests. So if children have a right to know who their parents are, that means that by law, DNA testing is actually allowed. The same thing is provided under the Children's Act of 2016, which again provides for declaration of parentage by the court. So in this context, if a person feels that they are not sure about who the parent of the child is, or the biological father, the biological mother, then they can actually petition the courts of Uganda, and court will give them the legal path to go ahead and carry out DNA testing where the results is sent back to court, court analyzes it using so many experts' opinions and the test results and all that, and then they will declare who the actual father or the actual mother of the child is. Now, this legal path is granted to quite a number of people. The first one is the child. As long as the child is not yet 18 years, they can actually petition court, and they can ask court to find out a way to declare who their father or their mother is. The man or the father is also allowed to petition court for a declaration of parentage. Then the mother as well can do this, and sometimes also some other guardians are allowed by law. Now, if the Constitution allows or gives the right to a child to know who their father is, and the Children's Act also does the same thing, then the next question then should be, what impacts do this have on the child, specifically in respect to your question? Now, we know very well that the Children's Act talk about the best interests of the child in everything that a court does, or in everything that any authority or person or body or leader in the community does. The law requires that the best interest of the child must be guaranteed and must be taken into account. And so in this context, if we pick from what Article 34 of the Constitution says, then that means knowing who the father or the mother of the child is actually in the best interest of the child. That is legally speaking. However, there are social factors to this. Now, the recent increase in DNA testing, especially from men, from fathers, in my opinion, most of this recent surge has come as a result of so many social factors. But specifically, we need to understand that DNA testing, as much as it is in the best interest of the child, it is provided by the law, it is currently being used as a sword against children. Now, the impacts of DNA testing on children has quite a number, and some of these are legal, some of these are social. Let's look at the legal, for example. Many of the fathers that are doing this DNA testing are actually going ahead to exclude these children from property, for example. So what happens is that people are rushing to know, oh, is this my child? Is this not my child? And all that, because they just want to make sure that when they die, or in a situation where they have to divide the family property, these children are excluded. Now, that is one of the circumstances under which people are using DNA testing as a sword, not as a shield to protect the children. They are using it as a sword to just against these children. That's number one. Then number two, some of these DNA testing actually resulting into violence. You get to realize that some of these people come back when they are bitter. They want to start beating up children. They are, don't want these children to come near. Some of them, you see videos where children are running toward these people when they're coming back. And you could see how they are actually very bitter, to the point that some of them even want to go ahead and cause physical harm to the child. And yet, the child is innocent in this context. The number 3, it also has a very strong mental and psychological torture on the child. You get to realize that, I think a couple of months back, many of us must have seen on social media, where a gentleman was putting a child, I think, on a border and taking him to go and look for the father of the child and all that. That is putting a child in a mental anguish and in a mental torture. It's very dangerous, because this child, as innocently as we all know, has grown up knowing that this is my father, this is my mother. And they don't even understand what the DNA testing is. Some of them are really below 10, below 12, and their mental growth is not that strong enough to understand what it means to say that someone has gone for a DNA test and I'm not their child anymore, and yet for all the 8 years, for all the 5 years I've stayed with this person. So we're also putting these children through this mental torture. And when it goes back to what the Children's Act says, that in everything that society, leaders, and courts do, they should put the best interest of the child, it now becomes a problem there. That in some of these contexts, the best interest of the child is not being put into context. So you're creating all these mental anguish on the child and all that. Then number 4, you also have the issues of insecurity. We need to realize, and this is a social factor, and we need to realize that how our parents raise us up have a lot to play on our confidence and how we handle ourselves when we grow up. And this is not your father at an early age of 8, of 10, of 12. And this person definitely, even if they don't chase you away, they're going to neglect you a lot. And that insecurity will start coming on board. You're not sure about what to do. So at the end of the day, you're going to find a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old girl or boy who has a lot of insecurity, lack of confidence, issue of self-esteem. And at the end of the day, again, it takes us back to what the law says, that this is not the best interest of the child. And then maybe the last thing that I could talk about is that it also brings conflict. And this is another social aspect that you see when this person comes back with the DNA test showing that this child is not there. It's not theirs. Ultimately, there's going to be friction between them and the child, friction between them and the mother or the father, and the families at large, and even the society. So at the end of the day, you get to realize that this is not good, because when you see, and as I conclude, when you conclude all these social and legal factors that DNA testing, the impacts that DNA testing has on children, you get to realize that as much as, yes, the Constitution says that a child has the right to know who their parents are, and also the Children's Act goes ahead to say that you can petition court to know where your parents are. It is important to note that it is not being used as a shield. It is being used as a sword against children, against their best interests that the law provides for, and ultimately, it has legal consequences and social factors into these children. The social factors will go even to the point when some of these people will get married, or they will have children, will have trust issues, and a lot of things come into play, and the mental, danger that it also comes with it. So that is what I could say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank. You bring a very interesting perspective to tonight's debate. You give us a context of how the law, the Constitution, provides for the right for the child to know who their parent is under the best interest, the best interest principle of the child, which is particularly, I think, a very good aspect of the law. But then now we are seeing the negative implications it's having on the child. Later on, I'm going to engage with you on whether we think it's plausible or it's feasible for us to go ahead and implement a paternity test law, and we know when exactly one can go ahead and take the test, and why exactly should they go ahead and take the test. I will engage you that on a later time. But for now, allow me go back to Sha. Sha, when you listen to Miss Molly and Frank, they bring out a very interesting perspective to tonight's conversation. Miss Molly gives us the reasons why we see there is prevalence of men going ahead to carry out DNA testing. And Council Frank gives us a perspective that, you see, much as a child has the right to know who the parent is, there are social and legal implications that it will have on the child. Now, I want you, Shah, at the moment you are working with the Cancer Institute and you are a medical doctor. I believe in your field you see a number of patients or even people coming in with various issues. Now, at the moment, I want you to explore the impact that this is going to have on families, aside from the child. You know that families are the smallest units of the society, which means it forms the upbringing of the child that Ms. Molly talked about, that at times it's because of upbringing. Now, what impact does this have on a family as a whole, not only in the short run, but also in the long run? Francis.
As you asked me, and the way you put it, that whether or not we've had to deal with with patients or clients, and as far as paternity testing is concerned, first of all, Uganda Cancer Institute doesn't test paternity. And the process of paternity testing is very clear. You must have a reason for doing it. But of course, there are so many other laboratories that are beginning to do it. I would definitely recommend that you use an accredited laboratory, and so that you have some sort of high quality. Yeah, because as much as people have seen people online posting about that I have not had children, the paternity test for my, that I did came back negative and all that. There are also people who have done this test, the same thing at various laboratories and gotten different results. And Drake asked me the impact of this entire paternity testing on a family. One, I'll start by talking about, the positives and come back to the negatives. One of them is in the society where we live, or the community we live in, nowadays, things are changing a lot. In my culture, we used to have what we call rot, that is in actually all the Luo culture. Rot had a belief that there were so many men who, one, were important and so did not have capacity to make their wives pregnant. Two, there were families that were naturally dumb or did not have certain attributes or qualities in their, their genetic pool. So they would encourage the woman to cheat in order to bring some of those things, to bridge some of those gaps. And in the rod system, men would not seek to know the true biological fathers of any child born in their family. And so he encouraged some of these micro-cheating by women as a way of ensuring the continuation of family lines. Unlike that, the current situation is that we are becoming more nuclear in nature. Families are becoming more nuclear in nature. Communities are beginning to breaking, if not broken, in the sense that the communal aspect of child upbringing or raising and all that, it's getting washed away. It's fading. And so with that, the more nuclear we become, people are beginning to seek clarity in order to find closure with their biological relationships. You get, there are some fathers who, first of all, find it easier to find closure when they have sought clarity. And so many of DNA testing can be, paternity testing can bring clarity in a relationship or biological relationship between a father and a son. And sometimes the father is not sure whether the kid is his or not, but the mother is claiming. And so you want to clear that doubt, and this sort of clarity brings some emotional stability, because you see, the thing is, living in an environment or living with having a relationship with this human being where you are not sure whether or not they are your child, or it brings a lot of emotional instability. You are not sure, you're questioning, you are doubting, and that has a huge impact on your relationship or your marriage or your family, because that is room for distrust. And of course, so seeking clarity brings about this emotional stability, whether or not the child is yours. If the child is yours, you are able to now focus on what matters. And so with that, it brings this emotional stability and bonding and in the relationship. You've doubted this for a long time, and you've tested and you found that your doubts are wrong, and you've put them to bed. So now you start to bond, to build, and it's important. It's very, very important. Uh, as I'm trying to say, it brings trust and makes communication better and all that. And even to the children of the family, what happens is that this child, you see, I've grown up as someone who has always had identity crisis, because I've had interracial uh, parents. So what a child must never go through, in fact, is questioning whether or not they belong, or whether or not they yes, and they need to seek some of these things and to find out about their personal identity in order to start understanding themselves and all that. And so to the child, at DNA paternity testing, not just paternity testing, even maternity testing helps a lot. Sometimes you've been thrown away when you were a kid and you don't know whether this person was your mother or not, but there's a claim. You seek some of this, and the way to do that is through a DNA. And I think it's amazing, right? But then also it has had negative implications, in the sense that sometimes infidelity is inevitable in the African context, in that many women tend to associate sexually with people outside their marriages along the journey of the marriage. And so they find themselves in situations where they are pregnant with another man's child. And so it's usually very hard to move out of the relationship because of so many other factors the other members will tell us. And so this woman decides to keep the child as the child of the man. And so the moment the test shows it's negative, that family or that marriage most likely will break. I want to give you an example, and I want to end on that. I grew up in an area where there was this man, and this is true. It's not read on internet, but something that happened really. This man married a woman, and so happened that this guy was important, like could not make this woman pregnant. But the same area where they stayed, the woman's former lover resided also. So this woman, along the years of their marriage, started seeking out and having an affair with the other man, and that man got her pregnant. She claimed it was this man. It was the husband's most happy moment. He was so excited. He was so happy. He was, and he gave this child his best, offered her the best education he could afford. He literally changed an entire, his entire being just to be there for the child. And then the woman again had another child with him over the years, and he didn't doubt her. But along the way, signs start to show. For example, one of the kids was a sickler, and this man has no traces of sickle cell. So it started bringing doubts to him. And so he sought an clarity by doing a DNA. And he found out that both of the kids were not his. And so he tried to do the same DNA test with that man who is a former lover of his wife. And both of the kids belong to the other guy. Now, in such a situation, he was very confused. He wanted to commit suicide, a lot of things. But of course, through guidance and counseling and therapy is picking up. And I want to say that as much as something may be very good, but in the actually all the Luo traditional settings, the moment I think this is not a saying, but the moment the fly has fallen in your food, even when you remove it or not, the damage is already done.
Thank you very much, Shah, for that wonderful insight. But just quickly, I still want to stay with you before I bring in Miss Molly. You made mention that the story you gave us of this man who was very unfortunate that both of the children weren't his. Now we have also had scenarios where we have not seen. We have had we have seen people who have conducted DNA tests here in Uganda from the various outlets that are there, and the results come out negative. Now, there's this one person who conducted a DNA test here in Uganda. They wanted to take that child out to study abroad. So they wanted to ascertain the paternity relationship. And they conducted 2 DNA tests here in Kampala, and both came out negative. So when they went to Kenya, results were positive, and Canada was positive. Speak to the accuracy of the DNA test before Ms. Molly comes in to tell us about the mental health implications this is having. Shah, briefly.
Okay, thank you very much, Drake. The thing is that, first of all, the accuracy of a DNA test entirely depends on one, sample collection of the DNA sample. 2, if there's transportation, the way it is treated. 3, processing of the sample, that is from the lab. Then, of course, integrity of the result. The thing is, majority of the DNA test results usually comes back with an accuracy of 99.9%. But then usually also what they do sometimes is that to improve quality, they also do the mother's DNA testing. You get, just for comparison. But the best thing is that this test be done in an accredited lab with quality control in order to, ensure you have the best results. And it's quite unfortunate that some unaccredited, by accredited labs, I mean registered, have a license to practice and actually licensed to do this specific test, because there are bodies that, regulate and ensure that this is done in, whatever test is going to be done is done up to the best quality. Unfortunately, just as sometimes even during testing for, other conditions, there are sometimes when results come when it is positive, it's a false positive, or it's a false negative. So in the same vein, some people in private practice do get some of these. But in Uganda, we've had, I think the National Analytical Lab has always given us, very accurate results that are not disputable. So we've had situations where that's happening, and I would recommend that people do seek this accuracy by using government facilities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You have had it in the medical doctor that we need to seek accredited facilities, mainly the government facilities. Mrs. Bushinje, When you earlier on you talked about the causes of or the causes of these DNA issues, and what you mentioned earlier was issues to do. Your key point was moral decadence, and when you listen to the submissions of Council Frank and Dr. Shah, you get the view that there are negative consequences relating to mental health. And now that is something I want us I want you to address, because let's say when a father or a mother gets to know this is not their child, definitely they are both affected. Either the father of that alleged child would go into mental anguish. Similarly, the child will also have mental issues. Now, you're a counselor. Have you possibly come across clients who come to you seeking advice? And what have you done? What have you told them? And how entrenched is this in our system? How bad is it? Mrs. Businji.
Thank you, sir, Douglas. Yeah, this is something that is really dangerous, of course. In as much as we see it rise up, I think it has gained the confidence of, most things they start from background or underground, and as they gain audience, then now they become like more public. But I think this has always been there, like the doctor has told us. DNA is not something new that we're hearing for the first time. It's something that has been there, but done it has not. In the previous times, it was not like very public and advertised. It would just be just like an individual request, or maybe in those times when people have had conflict and they really want to prove. But as we see today, like you're saying, Mr. Douglas, it is coming up. It's like it is trending now. It's like the in thing, and that's the society we live in. Something comes up, it trends, then after it dies, and then. But on the other side, of course, DNA comes with a lot of effects, and mostly, yes, the positive are there, but the ones which are many are the negative, and these negative and these effects, they are not only to the children, they are to the children, to the father, to the couple that is involved in directly, and also the other person who is the man that is involved also on the other side. Because if I'm trying to test DNA with my husband, that means my husband is suspecting another family or another man who could also be having a family. So it brings a lot of effects, both to the couples, to the children, to the families, and to the society and to the nation. Because, like you said, Mr. Douglas, it is only one person who okay, it's not one person, but it is. That's where the spark came from, who tested for children after coming and then found that, and then it went viral, and now everyone is talking about it. But of course, we are all affected because it affects the family picture or the unity, and yet we say that family is the backbone of society and the unity of society. So if it is affected, then everyone has mistrust about family. Now, if you ask someone, do you want to get married? There are very few people who would say no, who would say yes, because there's so many things. So, but on the other side, we see on the children, and even other people involved, there's depression. Mental health has mental conditions have come up lately. We are seeing a lot of mental issues, depression. We see psychological stress. We see emotional instability. People nowadays just anger blasts everywhere at workplaces, because people their mental capacity has been overwhelmed with a lot of stress from home, from work, from here. We see madness when you ask, like in clinic, in hospitals. Now we are having a lot of madness and psychological traumas because of so many things. So you see, these things will result into insecurities, like how doctor talked about it. These insecurities both today and tomorrow. And for these young children, these effects, for us as old people, like the couple which is involved, they affect us. now. But for these children, they affect them today and also tomorrow, because remember, this is the next generation. Now it's already being overwhelmed by all this. So the child will move on in life with insecurities because they're like, these are the things go on. They move on with insecurities, low esteem, unanswered questions. They are always bombarded by suicidal tendency. They're asking themselves why, and they don't find answers. And all these things, they bring effect both today and tomorrow. We see conflicts between families. So it's now if one couple tests and find that they are not the father, that means there's a father involved, like I said. Then that family now is also involved in the problem. And then the whole society, the neighbors, the families, the brothers, the sisters, it's a whole chaos. It brings effects everywhere. Now people are in court. Now people are, the money is going because you're trying to test. People are giving bribe here and here. And it is a lot of things being wasted. But on the other side, like Frank said, I said that some people are using this just to protect them, just to use it as to share property. Like I said, I had such an incident recently. Our father died without making will. So one of our brothers was saying that if you must share property, you must all do DNA, because according to him, I think there are people he doesn't want to take part of that property. So some people use it just to do what? Just just for selfish. And of course, like I said, most people, and the other things that people are using this DNA out of insecurity. At times you're just suspecting someone out of for nothing. And because you're insecure, you yourself, you have rumors from here and here, you just use it to intimidate and to just to push away someone for your own selfish desires. And we see these days, there's a lot of perversion of both heart and mind. We see lack of moral perversion, like I said. We see a lot of lack of that is also leading to this. And also selfishness and self-idolatry. People these days are too into self. I. You don't want to mind about the future of other people. You don't want to mind what is going on, what this is going to cause, both to you, the children involved, the society, and everyone around you, because we don't live alone. We are not an island. We live with other people, and our life is intertwined with other people. So whatever good or bad that happens to you, it affects the rest at large.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clearly bringing that out, that the actions that we do at the end affects the people at large, particularly children, and then the aspect of mental health. You highlight issues to do with depression, anxiety, among others. Councillor Frank, I would like to get to you. You earlier on mentioned the best interest principle that is provided for under the Children's Act. And you are a lawyer, and you know that definitely laws are brought up in societies to protect people from social ills that come in place. Now, there is a suggestion that was made by Mr. K. Angwe. He's a laboratory technologist at Makerere University. He suggested a comprehensive paternity law. Now, this is what, let me quote him what he says, that how does one wake up one morning and ask for paternity test? And who should authorize a paternity test? Where should the paternity test be conducted? What is the significance to the child who may be an infant? What happens after the result? So he suggests that we should come up with a comprehensive paternity law. So do you think it is imperative that we come up with such a law so as to protect the interest of a child?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, forgive my voice. Thank you, Jack. Yes, definitely, I am very much interested in having that conversation, but I want to before that point out some of the legal protections in the current laws. You know, before we even look about the next law. If you start from the Constitution, quite honestly, the Constitution actually protects children. You know, it gives all these rights to children, to education, to healthcare, to food, to housing, to be cared for to have parents, to know them. And so, and the Constitution does not, and this we really need to understand it very clearly. The Constitution does not segregate which child has these rights. It does not say that a child that is born out of wedlock, or it does not say that a child that does not belong somewhere. No, it says a child, and that is a key word. So meaning that anyone that is under the age of 18, living with someone, whether as a parent, as a guardian, in a foster care, everywhere, they have these rights. They have these rights to be educated. They have the rights to have food. They have the rights to have housing. They have these rights to healthcare and all that. So that right is automatically there under the Constitution. Now, the other law that governs children affairs is the Children's Act of 2016. It is also very elaborate. When you look at Section 5 of that act, you get to realize that it provides for a duty to maintain a child. And again, this duty was not specified. The law did not say, or does not say that the father has a duty to maintain, or mother has a duty to maintain a child who is a has, or a child who is not has. No, it says that you have a duty to maintain a child that you have. So by this, it actually means that the children have the legal protection under the Children's Act to be supported, to be maintained, to be taken care of, to be catered for by anyone that is supporting them at the time, by anyone who is their guardian at the time, by anyone who is presumed to be their parents at the time. So you have that legal protection again under the Constitution and under the Act. Now, there is something that I have noticed society is not understanding. There is that social impact, but there is also another impact that I need to mention under the law. Because the Children's Act also talk about the Children's Act also talks about the effect of DNA testing, the specific legal effect of the DNA testing. The practice currently with many societies is that when people do these tests, some of them even come back and pack these children, and you find them being taken somewhere. I don't know whether they already know who the real biological parents of these children are and all that, but you see that some of them, after the DNA, they want to come and pack these children and take them. And they do not actually know that there is a legal protection. So even after the DNA test, unless specifically stated by court, the law is very clear that Section 72, when you read it, of the Children's Act, does not say that when you do a DNA test now, you have to pick that child and take them somewhere. In fact, it is very clear that it does not confer a right of custody to the other person. That is what the law says. So when you go and do your DNA testing, the law still protects the child. You are not allowed to actually come and pick this child, pack them and go around the street or wherever you suspect and dump this child there and change custody. That is not allowed, even after the DNA testing is done. So that is a very strong legal protection. So what that means is that it's only court that has the right to actually determine the custody of this child after the DNA testing. So court can choose to say, okay, from now forth, this child will go and start living with the biological father or the biological mother. But you cannot stand or wake up on your own and say, okay, the DNA testing says I'm not the father or I'm not the mother, and I'm automatically just going to start looking for where this child's father or mother is. That is not common. That is not legal. It's not allowed. Now, it is also important to note that the most challenging part of all this situation is that quite often women don't actually go for this test. It's not very common. There are circumstances when they do, but most time it is men that are doing this. So it brings me to now the issue of what the doctor said. Do we need a DNA law? Do we need a law that will govern DNA? Yes, I agree. We do need. Especially on questions of under what circumstances would someone go for DNA testing? But also we need to know that there are so many factors that are involved in this. Technically, we would say that can we have a legal protection? We may not even need to have an entirely a DNA testing law. We could actually suggest amendments to the existing Children's Act and specifically look at areas like 1, under what circumstances would one go for a DNA test? 2, who should authorize the DNA testing? Then 3, what happens to the child after the DNA testing? And so those are some of the most important questions, at least those three. The question of property is pretty much governed by the Succession Act, to the extent that it actually is very clear that property, when you're dividing your property, every child under your custody has a right to get some property. Of course, there's also some legal loopholes there, where someone could easily get away from it. And at the end of the day, a child who has known this one person as their family may end up without any property. So maybe on top of the amendments that we would also make is to specifically also state the right of a child after DNA testing in respect to property ownership, property inheritance. So yes, so it would be important to have the current practice, and I'm glad that Dr. Shah is here. The current practice that doctors are doing is that people are just getting requests, and then they go ahead and do DNA test. Some of the circumstances under which people go for DNA test comes as a result of certain sickness that brings into question. And for doctors to arrive at a good conclusion to their clients, they have to do some of this testing. Like Dr. Shah mentioned, that this person had a family, unfortunately, the second child having sickle cell. In their background, they did not seem to have that kind of disease. And definitely that is going to bring into question, we have to test the father, or we have to test the mother to be able to establish if really our family has this background of sickle cell. So that medical need also causes that. Now, the legal protection that we need to get maybe to avoid situations where people just wake up and then go and get DNA testing and then later come and cause chaos, conflicts, fights, violence, and all these mental anguish on children, on parents, and other family members, is maybe to be able to say that even in a medical circumstance where doctors need to investigate and arrive at a medical conclusion, they still need to refer these clients or these patients to court for courts to actually give them the authority to go ahead and do the testing. In my very considered opinion, that is the only legal lock that we can afford to have. Beyond that, there is nothing else, because, to be honest, we cannot stop people from going for DNA tests. There's the social aspect where people are suspicious, they're having trust issues and all that, and they wake up and they want to go and do a DNA test. That one you can curb it, maybe. You can be like, no. Or maybe government can just wake up and pass a policy and refuse it. But there are also circumstances where the medical experts need to investigate certain things for them to arrive at a medical conclusion, like the situation that Dr. Sham mentioned. So how do we deal with that? Do we now say, no, we are not going to do that because the law does not allow us? People need to investigate. If I have if in my genes we don't have sickle cell, then I would be suspicious. And so a lot of things happen in there. So for me, the only legal lock that we have to look at here is making sure that there's one central authority that will be used to determine or to authorize who actually goes in for DNA testing. And again, I'm saying that I'm not against it. I'm saying everybody can be allowed to go for DNA testing. But maybe it needs to be centralized. Maybe it needs to come from courts. Maybe even if you're a doctor and you're in a circumstance where investigations will require you to do a DNA testing, you could tell this person, can they go to court? And then court will give you the authorization to do that. Or whether it is from a social issue, you can go ahead and still go to court. Or if we are going to say that court is very busy, then we could perhaps establish a body, sort of like a tribunal. We can establish a body like a tribunal that has composition of maybe doctors, social workers, and lawyers. And then this body will be there to maybe help people with processing or giving them authorization and all that after some explanation. But the challenge, of course, with using a tribunal is that it can be a little difficult to determine after what happens. The advantage with court is that after the DNA testing is done, court actually has the legal authority to make pronouncements on one, issues of property rights and inheritance of the children. Courts also have the right to make have the power to make to make a determination on custody and maintenance. Now, those are the advantages of using court. Where will this child go afterwards? Who is going to maintain this child? What happens next? And then also court has the authority to make pronouncements on some of these rights that I mentioned that children have. What happens after that? So yes, so it is good. We could look at amending the existing laws, because it's not a lot of questions that would need an entire act of parliament that is maybe going to a new one that is also going to have financial implications. We could just sit down and amend the existing law to just answer a few questions, and also to make sure that we will lock in some of the legal loopholes that would, as a result of the DNA testing, would affect some of these children. So that is what I can submit in respect to your question and a few other things that I thought would be important to legally mention as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Frank. It has been quite elaborate, and you have answered my question quite well. And it's true that we possibly do not need a new law, but just rather amend the existing laws in the Children's Act and answer those questions that you have clearly brought out. Thank you. And I think when we do possibly have that, we can address the issues that we are facing at the moment, though not entirely. Issues such as moral decadence, which later on Mrs. Molly will help us break down, and how best we can solve the issue of moral decadence in our society today in Uganda. But before
Jay,
yes.
Maybe you could just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Could you give me a minute to just throw a comment on morality and how this is also becoming a problem?
Please do.
Now,
please.
Well, first of all, I am a Christian, and so a lot of my worldviews are also informed by Christianity. But even for those that are not Christian, that are not doing the church marriages that is legal in Uganda, there's also the civil marriage. And I'm even still with the civil marriage that is done at URSB and at the district level. It also still states that you must have one wife and one husband. That is, for Christians, that is actually what the Bible tells us. But even for those that are not Christians, legally in Uganda, the civil marriage, you're supposed to have one wife and one husband. Now, we're living in a society that is getting dynamics every day. So it is not going to be easy to curb some of these immorality issue, infidelity and faithfulness and all that. And I think for me, it just gets back to the point of saying that society has a role to play. That the issue of this DNA and infidelity goes way beyond just the DNA testing that we're looking at, all the legal solutions that we're proposing. This is something that needs the cultural leaders to be on board, it needs community leaders to be on board, it needs church leaders to be on board, to be able to instill the culture of faithfulness in the young people that are growing up, and even in the couples that are already married, to really, really let people understand the social implication, the legal implication, the moral implication, the danger, the mental implication, the danger that infidelity and unfaithfulness has on the children, on society, and on it, to the extent of even our performance, work, economy, development, and so this. So it's family is so important that if you're having a broken family, it will go ahead to affect the other part of society and all that. So for me, this is like a call really to people to not ignore that this is just a DNA testing. Let's go maybe get a law, or let's go do this and we're done. This has a bigger role that everybody has to play to instill the culture of faithfulness in young people, especially that are hoping to get into marriage. People like us that are hoping to be married in a nearby future. That we need to understand now that my infidelity has a far-reaching implication on society, on family, and on children than I should than I can imagine. And that means I should consider behaving well, I should consider being faithful, and above all, as I conclude in this particular area, being honest is going to be very important in this as well. Because at the end of the day, why would you wait for 20 years for someone to learn that Frank is not their child when I'm 18 or when I'm 25? I think it's very important that we need to find courage, that if you find you've slept with someone and you get pregnant, especially for the ladies, it is good to come out. You'd rather face the consequences that early before this child even comes out, or before it's too late, so that everybody is able to deal with this, communities are able to deal with this, the parents of these children are able to be phoned even when they're still in the womb. So when they come out, they are going to either now be staying with their biological father or their biological mother immediately. But it's very important to speak up early enough. Do not wait when it's 20 years, when it's 5 years, when it's 2 years, and then you cause confusion and mental torture. Speak immediately. You find yourself in a situation that you're pregnant of someone who is not your husband, You'd rather go for divorce, or you'd rather ask for forgiveness, whatever you'd go for, you'd rather go for it to solve the situation. If the person cannot forgive you, go and file a solution early to protect the child. But if we keep pretending and covering up, it will automatically come out like it came out with the sickle cell issue years later. So somehow these things cannot be kept in the darkness. So let's pick up early enough. Part of being faithful is being honest and speaking up when you're in a wrong immediately. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Frank, you speak so passionately about this issue. I should let our listeners know that when you were in university, you used to be very, very active in the church, and you spoke very dearly on these issues. And I like how you submit on these issues with a lot of passion. But you made mention that we need to get religious leaders involved, cultural leaders involved. But this add this caution that when we are letting some religious leaders get involved, we should also know what kind of religious leaders are getting involved. Not recently, we have seen some religious leaders getting involved in issues of adultery. So we need people who are morally upright to lead this fight. But nonetheless, Francis, Shah, when you listen to the submissions, passionate submissions of Mrs. Molly, Council Frank, you get the feeling that now the community is at the verge of breakdown. That if the smallest units in the society are facing these issues of going for DNA tests and later on experiencing conflict, experiencing violence, in the end of the day, it culminates into a ticking time bomb that explodes into the society and explodes into the communities. I would like you to explore the impact that this has on communities.
Yes, Drake. Thank you very much. I've had a very interesting time listening to Council Frank. They just dissect this issue of maternity testing and what it has in the community. Now, the thing is that as Africans, we need to, or even as Ugandans, we need to understand where we come from, our roots, what we hold to be morally upright and what we don't, because morality is fluid and it depends on the society or the community you live in, their norms. Now, of course, bringing in the aspect of Christianity and all that, people do bring that in. We need to understand that polygamy in men, in community, was something that was widely embraced before Christianity came in, before this westernization started taking roots in Africa, in Uganda, of preaching a one man, one woman, or man and husband, monogamous sort of marriage. And so the same thing started. What was happening in African setting is that publicly men were marrying many women, but silently women were having many men. And so we had very many African men raising kids that are not of their own, without knowing and without having interest to know. And one of the reasons also is that there was absolutely by then no way to clearly know whether this is my son, my child, or not. Again, you'll carry your suspicion to your grave because there was no way. But right now there is a way. And so men are using this as an opportunity to seek the answers that their forefathers would have sought if indeed they had, the means. But then also it's about exposure, right? DNA testing has been there in existence for a very long time, but you see, many men didn't know about it. Many people were not aware about, DNA testing, fertility testing. And now they can access it and how they can use it. But right now we are in a situation where many people are becoming more and more informed with the social media era, with the, improved, technology on communication. So many people are getting to know about the existence of this service and how it can help them. And so they're using it as a tool to sort marital issues that exist. The thing is, before a DNA test, it's like in medicine. When a patient comes and tells me, I'm feeling this, that, and all that, I already have an idea what the problem is. But I order for tests, lab tests, to confirm my diagnosis. Not that I order for lab tests to give me a diagnosis. No. I order to confirm. The same way with this DNA testing, that people are not doing it because, they're just excitement out of the blue. No, there's already an underlying suspicion that, let me confirm. It's just a confirmatory test. And quite fortunate, many have been true, while others have been negative. And I think we've been hearing we have been hearing the negative ones only on internet, and that is a portrayal of women as being the sole cause or causes of the entire infidelity and breakage of marriage and all this. But the truth about the matter is that, one, as a community we live in, men are as infidel as women are, and the only thing is that the majority of the men are proudly doing it while women can't come out because of the African traditional, all the African beliefs or traditions. And so men are also using it as a tool of trying to emancipate themselves, say women are not, deliberately these or angels or something. Yeah. And this has had an impact on our community in the sense that many men are more and more beginning to fight for, or seek advocacy for truth, and just not keep quiet in their relationship and raise another man's child and all this. And I think it's good because it helps us to have clear. For me, I'm a believer in science. I'm a believer that right is right, wrong is wrong. Facts don't change. And so if this is your child, it is your child. If it's not, it's not. And you have got to know the actions you take afterwards, as council has been saying, whether or not to keep the child or continue, or whether the child should be protected. I believe the child is innocent, but truth must come out so you know how to behave. And this has had dire impact on our community. And I've seen that happen a lot. So I would wish to not continue and talk very much on this topic, and I thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much, Shah, for highlighting the aspect of African traditional society, which possibly is also having an impact on us today. Maybe before we go into another issue and maybe get to the conclusion of this conversation, Mrs. Modi, I would like you to kindly unmute, and where Shah has ended, continue exploring the potential impact that this DNA testing is having on communities.
I think we had already discussed most of the impacts, and those impacts, I said that they range both on an individual basis, on the children, on the family, and on the society. We see that there are a lot of divorces. It can lead to a lot of divorces. It leads to mistrust in the society. People now, if one man tests and finds that these children are not his, the rest would also want to do it because it has cast a seed of mistrust among others. So people start saying, am I safe? Am I safe? Let me also go and test. I don't want to be like the other one who raised the children and at the end found that they are not his. So it breeds a lot of mistrust in the society, among the families, among even the people who are not yet married, who want to have families. They go with that mistrust. It just bleeds a seed of mistrust all over, even the whole country, because now, like you said, that this DNA thing has gone viral. Every man now, some people are using it as as a joke, and they're saying, Munang, I better test. But as someone speaks, they say that out of the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what is in someone's heart, they will speak it out. We see mental illness, like I had said it, in the society it is rising because with mental illness, we see violence. A lot of things are happening in the society because, like you say, the family is the smallest unit of the society. So it starts from the family and it rises up even to the nations. And the truth is that right now, the society, families, nations, and people are very sick mentally, spiritually, morally, and even like we are saying, it even comes with physical signs. Also, people are also sick physically because of these mental and emotional traumas that they are going through. Yeah, but on the other side, me, like I would also want to add something on what Frank said, and of course I had also talked about it, that the solution to all these things is none other than at an individual basis. This all discipline starts from an individual basis because we can blame the society, we can blame the trends, the Western, the Northern, the Eastern, and anything that is coming up, the financial, the economical instability and everything. We can blame all those things, but these things are not new to our generation. These are the same challenges that have been there even in the past generation, and they are here. So the solution starts from us, from the individual basis, that you as a person, you're going to put your foot down and say, this is how I want to raise my family. This is how I want to be a different person. And as you cultivate that inside you, then you make it contagious to others. And that's why we are having such a dialogues, I think, like this talk, so that we can enlighten people that this is going on, but this is how we can intercept it. So me, I think we should go back to moral principles. We should go back to solving problems at a family unity, and we deal with the root, not waiting and to put the things on TV. We should go back to being intentional in our marriages and in our families. Now, the society we are living in, people, money has become a god. Money has become the in thing. As people are running for money. As long as I have money, I can marry 10 wives. As long as I have money, I can do this. But you see, money is not the answer to everything. We should go back to being intentional, marry for the right reasons, build your family on the right principles, teach children the right principles. Because if we don't teach children from our families the right principles, how people should live, being honest, being truthful, being content, being cultivating, teaching people emotional management skills, people just grow up. Right? Someone was saying that there's a difference between rising and growing. Most of the people are growing children, they are not raising them. And those are the same effects we are seeing today. So we should go back to the godly principles that can instill and is the basis of all these morals. And even the society, like Doctor has said, it has lost its touch. The society is also have been broken down. People now no longer do like those intentional meetings. Like things should not be rising to the internet. If someone has a problem, they should sit home, call relatives, or first solve it as an inner family, then have other people involved in relatives before it goes far. But someone rises one day in the morning and you find them on the internet and everything has gone viral, no one knows. So you see those relationships that guard and become our guardrails and become our boundaries that hold us and stop us from becoming funny and treat our moral principles have been overlooked. People now are, like I said, people now are living for themselves. Someone's like, as long as I want it, I will do it. I don't mind what happens. I don't mind who doesn't like it. I don't mind what goes on. So those would be like my take homes. And I kindly beg to leave because I have another meeting, which is starting like in 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Molly Busiji. We're very happy that you've given us those parting shots. I was actually about to ask you to do the same, but thank you. We are ending in a few. I'll kind of request Frank to give us your parting shots, and then we shall conclude with Dr. Shah. Then we shall call this a discussion. Council Frank, your parting shots and solutions.
And solutions. Well,
You have.
no. Well, quite honestly, from the legal perspective, I do think that we need to work on either amending the existing laws or whether we want to come up with a different regulation altogether. But we need to see how we can streamline the authorization of these processes, and we need to see how we can support our medical professionals who for me, in my opinion, I think is very important. Doing DNA test is, I think, has some of the reasons that are behind it, medical reasons, like helping investigate the cause of a particular disease and all that, and also getting some of those medical results help the other part of the members of that same family. And I think it is, yes, it is important. But we just need to find a way that we can regulate it, and let us see how we can put some privacy to it, because it affects people. Like the precurrent speaker just said, sometimes you wake up and it's on social media. And maybe this is a child who is 17, they have friends, they have people around, and it has an effect. So we need to see how we can protect it. That's why in courts, a lot of family issues actually handled behind camera, and most of them are handled in the judges' chambers, because they know that family affairs should have some bit of privacy. And I think those are also other areas that our regulations, or the new ones, or the amending ones, could look up to. But otherwise, I still think that family is important. I am still encouraging people to get married, have families, give birth to children. And above all, let's stay very, very faithful. Some of these solutions are not legal, are not medical. Some of these things will go deep into your heart as a person and how you want to live your life. Your personal principles are going to come into play. So there's no solution that I can suggest for anyone out there. There's no solution that the law is going to suggest to curb infidelity or unfaithfulness. There's nothing that doctors like Dr. Shah will do to curb this. What is only going to stop this is faithfulness and being honest. Like I said, if you find yourself in a situation you've made this mistake, speak up, preferably when the child is still in the womb, so that you can avoid all the dramas that will come in the future, because this will be known. But the best solution is, do not go ahead and sleep with another woman or another man that is not yours. And those who are not married, wait when you're married, and then you give birth within a family, a marriage setting. So thank you for hosting me. It was very joyful. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Center for Constitutional Governance and Drake, for giving us these opportunities to always have this conversation that supports society and the fabrics that keep us together. And thank you, Dr. Shah, and the other panelists as well, for sacrificing their time and giving us their insights. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Frank. We are happy to have hosted you today. Dr. Francis Shah Rubangakene, your parting shots, sir.
So, one, of course, I want to concur with what Councillor has said, Councillor Frank has said, that there should be regulation to DNA paternity testing or even maternity testing, just as there is regulation to DNA forensic testing and others. And one of the areas we should focus on, in addition to helping keep privacy and confidentiality and all this, is guidance and counseling to people who seek that, people who seek DNA testing. Sometimes we've had to break the worst news to many patients, but through guidance and counseling, these patients usually take it in a more positive manner. And so there is need for improving in that area, so that you don't just test and go. You also test and at least get some help that you need to, to navigate kind of condition or situation that you find yourself in. And I'm with a very, very strong belief that the need to test is there, but most importantly, there should be focus on after testing and the results is out. How well do we manage this? And I think counseling is good. And also, as counsel said, I don't think anyone should be able, not everyone should be able to access DNA testing. It has to be with at least some background, as to why it is being done. Whether good or bad, it has got to be there. And the law enforcers must be involved in all this, because it could be a genesis of a criminal act, like murdering, in cold blood, your partner who has been infidel with you and all this. Yeah, and I want to say that thank you very much, Drake, and the other panelists who spare their time to be around. It's early in the morning on a Saturday. And it's been a great pleasure having to discuss a vast number of topics with Civic Space TV or Center for Constitutional Affairs. I'm glad to be, a common criminal.
Yeah, you have. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Francis Rubangakene, for honoring our invitation. Thank you very much, Council Frank Uche, and thank you very much, Mrs. Molly Bushinje. It has been a very interesting conversation. My name is Douglas Draconen, and I've been your host for tonight's conversation. Please do remember to subscribe and watch all the shows. Otherwise, it's a good afternoon for me and nice time. Cheers.